Hello and welcome to Who Is Best, a show where I, Lo Claudine, take games that give you choices and rate those choices in a tier list. And if you like objective tier lists of video games, then go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Today is the day we tackle, in my opinion, one of the greatest PS2 RPGs that almost no one seems to talk about, Shadow Hearts Covenant. Shadow Hearts Covenant is the sequel to the original game Shadow Hearts, which in itself is the sequel to Koldelka. Covenant improved immensely in graphics, gameplay, and especially characters. The first Shadow Hearts had a fun cast, but by no means an interesting one. Shadow Hearts Covenant hits you with an incredibly smart wolf, a creepy puppeteer, a Romanoff heir, a hot fortune teller. Hell, we even have a vampire with a WrestleMania addiction. Not to mention the return of the protagonist, Yuri. We'll be rating all of these party members to see how they stack up. Similar to the first game, magic is pretty powerful in the opening hours, but as you get some of the more rare items in the late game, physical attackers become pretty much broken. Because of the interesting ring judgment system used in battle, player ability is a factor, so we'll be considering that on top of stats, availability, and unfortunately the return of SP or sanity points, which when depleted sends your character into a berserk state. Oh, and stick around till the end where we'll reveal the optimal party for your playthrough. That was a lot to get through, so let's jump straight into the tier. First on this list, and the only member of the tier, is Anastasia. Anastasia is here for two reasons. She's completely outclassed by Blanca in support and by Karen in single target damage. The second is that she has the lowest SP of the crew, and thus can become quite a nuisance. She does let you see the enemy's HP and element type, which is helpful, but is it helpful enough to take an entire party slot? I guess that's up to you. The low tier. Geppetto is an incredible caster. His magic is devastating in early and mid game. His speed is an issue though, and will often cost you in the late game. His defensive fragility and low HP only adds to this issue. Once you get to the late game, he's no longer worth a party slot. Physical damagers will far outpace him in both offensive and defensive capabilities, leaving him to twiddle his thumbs. The mid-tier. Blanca is nearly a carbon copy of Karen. He has both decent physical and magical abilities and serves best as a support character. His high speed makes him highly effective at popping off support skills, but the biggest reason why he made it to the mid-tier is that he has access to the best healing magic. Geppetto and Anastasia can outpace him in magic damage, but of the three characters we've talked about so far, Blanca is the most well-rounded and useful. Next on the mid-tier is Karen. Karen is a great character, but she is a jack of all trades, and unfortunately fails to be incredibly significant. Karen has both above average physical and magical attack, her physical being better than Anastasia, Geppetto, and Blanca's. She isn't as good in this area as other more focused characters later on this list, but when considering the lower tiers, she's probably the best choice. The crest system saves her from being completely useless, as you can build her into a pretty impressive support character. And with certain powerful items, she can keep herself viable in physical attack in the late game, but just barely. The top tier. Unlike everyone on the below tiers, who start out good and lose effectiveness as time goes on, Lucia starts out as a pretty terrible character and becomes somewhat broken in the late game. Everything changes once she gets her oils in Russia. This rockets her up to the top tier as she becomes the single best support character in the game. Her high magic is pretty good and she'll be able to add to your damage output at times, but increasing stats, evasion, critical rate, healing, adding status effects to attacks, healing status effects on party members, and a million other things her oils do is the true reason you want her on your endgame team. Not to mention her two massive earrings. The final member of the top tier is Joaquin. Joaquin is a pure physical damaging machine. His golden bat form makes him the undisputed best party member for attack. Unfortunately, his forms are based off of an algorithm, and although you can manipulate it, you won't be able to always have the results you want. But that's alright, as his Grand Papillion form is also very powerful. Magic-wise, he's pretty unreliable, but given the Mind's Eye, this guy will dish out the heaviest damage in the game. The God tier. The God tier is kind of a no-brainer when it comes to the Shadow Hearts series. The fusion ability is absolutely broken by design, and any character that can utilize it will be your best party member, no questions asked. There are 2 of these characters in this game, the first being Kurando. Kurando doesn't hold a candle to Yuri and is obtained very late in the game, but that doesn't matter as in the end game, he will always be the best choice for an optimal party. Kurando is a very strong physical attacker. He'll be a nice late game replacement for Joachim, and given his late game fusions, he'll be an incredible powerhouse. The final member of the God tier and undisputed best party member is, of course, Yuri. He's overpowered from beginning to end, and despite his inability to utilize crests, has no faults whatsoever. Given Mind's Eye and with a little practice, Yuri will dish out amazing damage rivaling or topping your best party members. Now, as for optimal parties, you'll want to go with Lucia as soon as you get her. She'll be pretty useless in the early game, but the levels and stat growths, particularly in speed, will be well worth it in the late game. Use Joachim and Yuri as your main attackers. The 4th slot can be either Karen, Anastasia, Blanca, or Geppetto in the early and mid game. Once you get Kurando, you have a choice to make. Do you want to keep Joachim on the party and have an aggressive attacking party, or do you need more support? If that's the case, then I would personally take Karen because she'll do decent single target physical damage while also supporting you. So the final team will be Yuri, Kurando, Lucia, and either Joachim or Karen. And that's my list. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you all later.